world of cable news screaming and social media echo chambers, it's easy to lose the signal in the noise. Every day, policy is debated, votes are cast, and your tax dollars are spent. We cut through the headlines to bring you the critical context you need, focusing on what's really going on in news and politics. Welcome to the Analytical Iowan Podcast. This is your daily dose of fact-driven politics. Let's analyze today's news. Here's Eric.
We are back here on the Analytical Iowan Podcast. It will be Sunday, December 7th, as you're listening to this, if you're listening to it on the podcast. Now, we are live here on TikTok, waiting for people to join the room. We're going to be discussing news and politics, and we're going to see if TikTok keeps me up, if I get restricted like some other creators I've seen. We're going to be talking about everything going on right now. We have got some big news going on. We have found out that a judge in Texas, or a judge in Florida, has agreed to release some sealed grand jury transcripts, which is typically not done, and that's in regards to the Epstein files. And they're doing that because of that federal law that was passed just last month after the discharge petition requiring the Epstein files to be released. So we could see some stuff in there. And one of the reasons that hadn't been released as of yet was because typically grand jury information is all kept under seal. Now, we could see what that investigation, what those files have, and that could come out as early as next week. And that is just going to continue to put the pressure on Donald Trump. And he's going to crack under the pressure at some point. He is not going to be able to handle everything going on when it comes to the Epstein files, etc. As he's trying to keep all of these things juggled and going, he just can't. He can't keep everything up in the air. It's going to be impossible for him. And while he is trying to keep people away from talking about the Epstein files, he doesn't want them talking about the double strike. He's trying to avoid them talking about the economy being bad and everything else. Like, it is crazy how many things Donald Trump is trying to juggle at this point, and he's not getting anywhere because all of his normal diversions and distractions aren't working. He can't seem to get away from the Epstein files. You know, he thought, well, if I just tell him we're going to release them, it'll be fine. Didn't happen. He tried to say, well, there's nothing in the files. Didn't work. It's a hoax. Didn't work. Same thing with affordability. He wants us to believe the affordability is nothing but a Democratic scam, and it's not. You go to the store and everything is more expensive. Plain and simple. And when you go to the store and you can't afford the stuff you're buying, that's a problem. You know, people are going to only buy what they can actually afford. They're cutting back. They're not spending as much. And that's a bad sign for the economy. But Donald Trump wants us to believe the economy is great, best economy ever. How? How is it the best economy we've ever seen? He's ruined this economy. And it's only going to continue to get worse until Donald Trump is out of power and we have Democrats back in charge, and they're actually doing things that are working toward helping the everyday American. Now, I've been saying for a while, I think that for 2028, the Democrats need to run on a New Deal style platform, a New Deal style message of affordability, trying to make sure we're taking care of everybody out there, you know. And I think depending on what happens with these ACA subsidies, that there may be a real desire in this country to go towards something like universal health care or Medicare for all or something like that. And they may have to, in that first 4-year term of the next Democratic president, completely overhaul the ACA and go to the public option. Something like Medicare for all or something like that. Because if they don't extend these ACA subsidies, healthcare is going to get out of hand, and it's going to get way too expensive. And people aren't going to be able to afford the healthcare they need, right? So if things get bad enough, you could end up pushing the Democrats, like their platform could write itself, right? Like I think they need to focus more in 28 on what they're going to do for people and not focus as much on everything related to Donald Trump and about how bad he is, unless you are talking about, you know, what you're going to do differently than the current administration. I think that was one of the things that hurt Kamala Harris, is her message. While she had a lot of plans, it got missed there because, you know, she was too busy talking about all of the negative things about Donald Trump, which you had to do because there are so many. And here we are, 11 months into the Trump administration. He's still blaming Biden for everything going on. And he's going to probably try to blame Biden until the day he's gone. The whole thing is, you know, it's a problem for Donald Trump. He doesn't know how to fix anything. He's attempting to, but everything he's doing is failing, and he can't come up with anything brilliant at this point. And he doesn't have anybody around him that is actively helping to give him decent direction or decent advice to get him toward that point where he has, you know, good ideas. He got the best he could find with the cabinet he has. Oliver's mom says, people will go to ERs if they don't have health insurance. Hospitals will lose money and close. Yeah. Yeah. And that is part of what they are arguing over when it comes to extending the ACA subsidies. Republicans want you to believe that Democrats are trying to allow undocumented immigrants to get all sorts of money from Medicare, which isn't true. The only time Medicare pays out is if they show up at the ER, they need treatment, which is the law that Reagan signed into law, that you go to the ER, you get treated, and if you absolutely can't pay, Medicare picks up the difference so that these hospitals aren't out the money. And in lower income and lower population areas, these hospitals, if they don't keep that money flow coming in, they may have no choice but to close. Will says it's all lies, which is his MO. Yeah, all Donald Trump does is lie. Oliver's mom says everyone will suffer, which is 100% true. You know, people are going to suffer if they don't pass the ACA subsidies. And I don't want to see that happen. I know there are people out there that are going to be in the comments when this gets posted on YouTube, etc., talking about how they need their health insurance. And I agree that they do. And they only can get it because of the ACA subsidies. And I don't want to see anybody suffer without the insurance that the ACA provides. But even if they expand it, if it gets bad at all, even for a little bit, this could push us finally toward that want to make healthcare more affordable and getting us closer and closer toward some kind of universal healthcare. Now the question is going to be, do Democrats actually get it right? Or do they fuck it up and allow Republicans to push them around, and, you know, do they back down again? That's the problem with Democrats. When they have the power, when they are in power, they don't like to utilize it nearly as much as they could, and they would rather sit back and just get whatever they can get bipartisan and maybe go along to get along. And that's not what we need anymore. We can't do old school politics. The game of politics has changed. It has changed all the way back in 2016, almost 10 years ago, when Donald Trump came up. You know, we're not in the same ballpark anymore. Molly says they do it in increments. Yeah, they do stages, and when it comes to passing stuff like this. Problem is, Republicans won't allow them to take that big leap, and what the Democrats need to do is just say, fuck it, and we're doing it. We're in charge. Let's do what we're going to get things done for the American people. And as I've said before, one of the reasons Democrats never want to take that plunge is they're afraid that they're not going to get reelected. But if you pass things that are beneficial to everybody, you're going to get reelected. If people like what you're doing, you don't have as much to worry about when it comes to get reelected. So the whole thing is that Democrats need to be playing a different game of politics. They can't keep doing things like what Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. That didn't work then. It's not working now. We need to get down in the mud and the muck with them, and we got to brawl. And we also need to get a decent attorney general, whoever the Democratic president ends up being after 28, because I just do not see any way that the Republicans win. Dixie Norma says Dems will keep putting up candidates like Kamala. What do you mean by that? What was wrong with Kamala Harris? Why? Why do you think it gave the election to Donald Trump? Molly says, when they've had the majority, they have not done the things they needed to do. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They could have done things before, but they said, well, we don't need to codify Roe v. Wade. It's fine. Republicans are never going to go ahead and get rid of it. They won't overturn it. It's settled law. Supreme Court took care of it. Yeah. Well, figured out who you are, and you're gone. Now, Dixie says, she was basically just vote for me because I'm a brown woman and Trump bad. No, if you listen to Kamala Harris, she had plans. Her plans and her strategy got lost in the other half of the message, which was how bad Donald Trump was. I can tell what type of a person you are with a nickname or a screen name like Dixie Normus and no profile picture. And you're going to be the type of person that's going to end up getting my life taken down, and I don't think so. So you're gone. I mean, Kamala Harris had some good plans, but she had a bad implementation. Here we are over a year later. We could be talking about any number of things. Hell, we could have been talking about all the good things she'd accomplished a year in. But we had too many people in this country that either didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris because they didn't want to vote for a woman, didn't want to vote for a minority woman. And then you had the other group of people who goes, there was no Democratic primary. But there was. There were 3 candidates in the Democratic primary. Joe Biden, Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr. RFK Jr. dropped out after like 3 races, said, nope, I'm done. I'm going to run as an independent. Then you had Marianne Williamson. I think she went the whole way. I think she only ever gained like 1% of the delegates. That's it. Joe Biden was winning primaries with 97, 98% of the vote. He was their candidate till that bad debate. And what I said then, and I'll repeat now, for all the people who are mad about Joe Biden, not finishing the race and Kamala Harris becoming the nominee, would you have said the same thing if Joe Biden, instead of just saying I'm not running, would you have said the same thing if he had passed away? If he was no longer with us and she just became president that way? Would you have said, well, there wasn't a primary? Or would you have said, she's the sitting president, it makes sense that she'd be the nominee? You'd probably say, no, it made sense she was the nominee. She was the sitting vice president. There was a primary. Joe Biden the whole point of when you go for a ticket is that you know if something happens to the president, you want their VP to be next in line. It made sense that she was next in line. Oliver's mom says Kamala didn't have enough time to get her ideas out there. Right. I talked about that before Joe Biden stepped out. I compared it to LBJ in March of, was it 68? Not running for re-election. Saying that was too close to the election. It was too late in the year. And all it did was set up his VP, Humphreys, to fail. And I said, this is going to be similar. That the Democrats better hope they are right. Well, they weren't. Coffee Man 613 says, they could have ran a dead man and I would have still voted for him over Trump. Yeah. Some people would have. Donald Trump was that bad. Donald Trump shouldn't have been president. He shouldn't have won. He fell ass backwards into the presidency twice. All metrics were saying he should have lost in 2024. Period. He should have lost. Now, he fell ass backwards in 2016, too, in part because Republicans didn't know how to deal with him. He was playing an entirely different game of politics. They wanted to play traditional politics, and they were going to, everybody thought going into 2016, pretty much a foregone conclusion, it was going to be all for show, that they did the primary, but it was probably going to be Jeb Bush. Richard says Kamala couldn't make a complete sentence that made any sense. Have you listened to Donald Trump? Kamala Harris spoke in complete and full sentences. The only reason she didn't make any sense to you is she's educated and she used bigger words than you could handle, and you're already blocked. Dragon says society is moving closer to fascism. It is right now with the current administration working on, now, this administration will not be in power forever. In fact, I don't think Donald Trump makes it to the end of his term. I think before 2029, you will have President J.D. Vance. Coffee Man says anyone that believed Trump would lower prices day one is definitely poorly educated. Yeah, he just said, I'm going to do it. Didn't say how, and they didn't care how. Coffee Man says Trump has a vocabulary of a fifth grader. I've said that, and then actually thought about it, and I think some fifth graders have a bigger vocabulary than Donald Trump. He is definitely suffering signs of major cognitive impairment, whether it's stroke, whether it's dementia, whether it's a combination of both. And vocabulary is one of the things that goes first. Molly says third grader. Yeah, that may be closer to the actual mark. Yeah, Donald Trump he wasn't a good candidate, but Kamala Harris didn't get a chance to get her message out, not in 104 days. She was hamstrung by the Democrats. What they should have done is Joe Biden should have resigned and let her take over. Not only could she have gotten her message out there, but then all of the fanfare of it happening, of, oh, you're going to elect the first black woman, would have already been over. Done. Right? She's already in office. And carrying that incumbency would have been a huge boost for her. Oliver's mom says he can't even stay awake at cabinet meetings. No, he can't. He's dozing off. The minute the focus isn't on him, the minute he's not talking, and when he's able to zone out just a little bit, and down he goes. Period. He's losing it. He is 80 or almost 80 years old, and it's only going to get worse. They're trying to prop him up as best they can, but they're not going to be able to prop him up forever. And I just don't think he makes it to the end of his term. Neil asks, bro, what's your take? Why don't reporters call him out when he lies or disparages them? Because they prefer having the access and being able to, interview the president. And they know if you piss off Donald Trump, he'll revoke your press credentials and say, well, yeah, I'm not taking questions from you anymore. He'll run them through the mud and this and that. And they just rather not upset him. That's part of it. And a lot of them are still treating him like it was in 2016 when he was good for TV. He was weird. He was new. He was crazy. He was a shit show, but he was good for ratings. So all of the left-leaning stations and stuff ran him nonstop because it was good. It made him money. So they don't push back on the lies because it's not about getting the truth out there. It's about, oh my God, look at this crazy thing Donald Trump said. We can run that as an ad, as a news story, and get ad money and all that kind of stuff. Real journalism's pretty much gone. Will asks, where's the Grim Reaper when you need him? With any luck, if he's not chasing around Donald Trump, maybe it's Mitch McConnell, or maybe it's Chuck Grassley. Coffee Man says, Kamala spoke more sense in them 100 days than Trump spoke in 8 years. True. 100% true. Will says reporters are handpicked. That's the other half of it. He handpicks his own reporters. Basically, if he thinks you're going to push back and ask hard questions, they just won't give you the press credentials to get close enough to ask him questions. He won't call on you. Molly says, I seem to recall Old Soul talking about him falling asleep standing in Japan. I don't remember if he fell asleep standing up in Japan, but I know when he was visiting with the Prime Minister, he was supposed to walk to the American flag and the Japanese flag, turn and bow with the Prime Minister. It was part of the ceremony. And they put him on, they got lined up, they were walking down the way, and he was supposed to walk side by side with her. He just started walking ahead of her a little bit, gets up to the flag, gives it a salute, and just keeps on walking like he has no idea what he's actually supposed to be doing, just that he remembers he's supposed to salute the flag. And he turns, she kind of even turned and gives him this look like, did you just do that? And I guarantee you they had probably just went over it 5 minutes before. But Donald Trump is, he's not in his right mind anymore. Paula says, Will, I keep asking where Dexter is when we need him. He would have a bunch of bad guys to get. Yeah. Aunt Molly says he censors the press. He does. Will says there is no more White House press corps reporters like Sam Donaldson. Oliver's mom says the press can only report on what the Pentagon says they can. Most have boycotted. When it comes to the military, that's also true. They wanted the reporters only to report on what they want. They wanted to be able to approve every story. That is not freedom of the press. Diane says, poor Chuck, everyone picks on him. Maybe he won't run again. We can hope, won't we? We can hope. But as of right now, he is considering running again for re-election in 2028. He will be 96 years old. 95, one of the two, when he runs for re-election, putting him at 101 if he serves out that term. Why? Why is Chuck Grassley still running for office? Why is he still in office? And it's only because people my age and younger have never not known a time when Chuck Grassley was a senator. He has been a senator for Iowa longer than I have been alive. I remember doing a school project in like fifth or sixth grade when we were being taught how government works, and we had a form letter we were supposed to write to our senator, and we had to write to Chuck Grassley. I don't think we wrote to whoever the other senator was. I don't think it was. It might have been Tom Latham, but I don't remember. But I remember having to write to Chuck Grassley. And it was something like, I'm so and so in, such grade, and what would you advise, or something like that. I don't remember the exact assignment. It was a long time ago. But I remember writing the letter to Chuck Grassley. And there are people that show up and vote every time his name is on a ballot. He doesn't campaign here. He doesn't. He shows up, he does one event every time he's up for election, and that's it. One event. Doesn't campaign, barely does town halls, doesn't run ads, but he runs on name recognition alone at this point because he has been in the Senate for 40 plus years. It is ridiculous. Aunt Molly said the prime minister had to eventually guide him by the arm. Yeah, in Japan, she did. She kind of had to guide him to where he needed to go. He seemed like he was completely out of it. Like he didn't even know what was going on. And that's a scary thing to watch when it is the leader of your country, acting that way. Will says, but the Pentagon is leaking info to papers and cable news. Yeah, they are. This stuff is getting out there because people in the Pentagon actually care about what's going on, and they want people to be informed, and they don't like what this administration is doing. Well, says Chuck Grassley, oh my God, what the fuck, Iowa? Yeah. Yeah. The dude has been around forever. And last I had heard, the plan was for, at some point between now and when Kim Reynolds leaves office, and I don't know if it's going to happen now that she announced her retirement and not seeking re-election, but for Grassley to resign or pass away, whichever comes first, and for them to appoint his grandson, Pat. That way, maybe Pat Grassley doesn't have to even campaign, and you just show up and, oh, it's Grassley. I remember Grassley. And he runs on name recognition alone and ends up being able to just keep getting elected. Oliver's mom says, I saw Gore speak tonight. He's only 2 years younger than Trump, night and day. Yeah. Night and day difference. Bill Clinton is younger than Donald Trump. And he was president, what, 30 years ago? Just about, yeah, 30 years ago. And he's in better cognitive shape than Donald Trump. It's uncanny. Paul says, Old Soul did say DJT fell asleep standing up. Japanese TV was airing it, but it isn't aired here. It wouldn't surprise me. The news media's got to be careful what they pay, what they play, and how bad they make Donnie look, because he's got such thin skin. He'll try to get their broadcast license revoked, etc. Diane says Grassley's staff is rude when you call in to leave messages. Not surprised, because they don't care. What do they? What do they care? Grassley's going to get reelected as long as his name's on a ballot. Iowa, I really hope not, but it wouldn't surprise me if in 28, at 95 years old, that Chuck Grassley gets reelected. And usually it's not even close. It's like 60 to 65% of the vote or more. Will says that is nepotism, and then Iowa is dumber than Kentucky. Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I heard that that was the active plan, and that somebody in the Reynolds governor's administration had come out and basically leaked it to the press, and it really isn't getting talked about too much. I still think it's the game plan. I think they're going to try to pull it off. Rocky says 90 freaking 5. Jesus. Yeah. Dude's 95 years old and he has been in the Senate longer than I have been alive. Simple fact of the matter is the other fact I like to bring out is that he is older than the first printing for the recipe for chocolate chip cookies. No joke. He is older by almost a year than the chocolate chip cookie. It was in the 1950s when he turned 18. You know, he doesn't have many years left at best, and he's making laws and passing laws for people who've got 40, 50, 60 years to go. Pam asks who? I'm talking about Chuck Grassley, the elder senator for Iowa. He's 92, will be 95 in 28, and is planning to run for re-election. Will says, to vote Republican is literally courting death. Yeah. Yeah. Now, if only the Grim Reaper would hurry up and do his job for a few of them. Will says he is Senate pro tem. Yeah. He is fourth in line for the presidency. Third in line for the presidency. Coffee Man says anyone who votes for Grassley is insane. I haven't voted for Grassley since 2016. Now, I know, let's see. Was he up for re-election in 2016? Yes. And that was the year he held up Merrick Garland's nomination to the Supreme Court. He was one of the Republicans that held it up. Besides Mitch McConnell, Grassley refused to let that nomination out of the Judiciary Committee. Molly says it's time for Iowa to get an Afton Bain. Yeah, definitely. Will says, dear God, fourth in line. I hate this timeline. Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's actually third, but either way, the fact that he is in the presidential line of succession is astounding. And I mean, I get it that is his position, but you know, he only got it because he is the oldest Republican or the longest serving Republican in the Senate right now. Bren says hello. Hey, Bren. Dan says, unfortunately, I voted for Grassley in the 70s. In the 70s and 80s and even 90s, I don't think Grassley was that bad. You know, he did some good things for Iowa. The Farm Bill did amazing things for Iowa and Iowa farmers. Problem is, the older he gets, the crazier he gets. And he's not making good decisions anymore. Coffee Man says, let me clarify that. Anyone who votes for anyone 70 or older is insane. I can't agree with you there. Because I did vote for Joe Biden, who was 74, I believe, when he ran. But he's in much better mental and physical shape than Donald Trump, then or now. Oliver's mom says 2025 minus 95 equals 1931, before World War II. What the fuck? Yeah. I think actually he was born in 34 because he'll be 95 in 28, but still. Will says, allow the president to change constitution by executive order. Are they insane? Most Republicans are. Now, I don't think even this Supreme Court is going to allow the president to change the Constitution by executive order. Not completely. I think they're going to put some guardrails in. Coffee Man says, like I said, I would have voted for anyone other than Trump. Yeah. And if the Democrats had ran anybody other than Hillary in 2016, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. Well, says they are having a hearing. The Constitution is clear. You're talking about birthright citizenship? Oliver's mom says Constitution is just a suggestion to Republicans. Some of them seem to think so, especially Donald Trump. Will says Hillary Clinton betrayed us. I don't know if she entirely betrayed us. She was just a horrible candidate. She was a straight horrible candidate. I said that at the time. They shouldn't have ran Hillary. With all of the dirt Republicans had on Hillary Clinton and she was their boogeyman, why would you run her as your nominee to replace Barack Obama? Now, Joe Biden didn't want to run, sure, but there were tons of other Democrats that could have been a better candidate. Democratic, as much as I hate the establishment leaning on the will of the voters and stuff, the Democratic establishment should have looked at Hillary and said, no, just no. Will says, yep. Yeah, they are going to hold a hearing on birthright citizenship. But I don't think there's any way this Supreme Court is going to actually overturn birthright citizenship. I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, why they're holding the actual hearing, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't look at the actual ruling as to why they are taking up the case. I don't know if they are looking at the merits of the case or if they are looking at the grounds for, like, whether or not the group that sued even had the right to bring the case. There could be differing reasons. I just don't know which that is. Coffee Man says Supreme Court is corrupt. Well, yeah. Supreme Court needs an overhaul. Definitely needs an overhaul. Coffee Man said Hillary had too much baggage. Way too much baggage. And, you know, I wasn't doing any of this back then, but I could see it then. I saw all of it was coming. That she had too much baggage. I knew before, when she even announced that she was running, I knew what the Republicans were going to say about her and how they were going to fearmonger. And I was right, but of course I don't have any video evidence of that back then. She was a horrible, horrible candidate. Will says Netanyahu just called the Pope anti-Semitic because he visited Lebanon. Yeah, I really don't care what Netanyahu says. Aunt Molly says corporate Democrats err talking about Hillary. Will says Hillary did a speech defending the actions of Netanyahu. Well, I didn't see that one, but I mean, I trust you, Will. I guarantee you, you know, I'm sure she did. I don't know why she would do that. It makes no sense. It's dumb. Oliver's mom says Supreme Court needs term limits. 100%. Coffee Man said they should not even be having a hearing on birthrights. See, that's what I don't know. I haven't looked into that enough to say it is on birthright citizenship. I know it is on the birthright citizenship case. I just don't know if they are looking at the merits of the case as far as, you know, where birthright citizenship stands or not? Or are they looking at whether, like, the people who brought the case had the standing to bring the case, etc.? Will says, look up her speech she did for AIPAC in New York. I'll have to look that up. Because I haven't seen any clips on that. But it doesn't make... It's weird. There's too much money from AIPAC in politics on both sides of the aisle. Trucker T's out there. Hey, Trucker. Yeah, Hillary had a chance. Will says, Clinton stated that TikTok videos about the actions of Israel in Palestine are AI. Holy fuck. Wow. Oliver's mom says, what happens to the rest of the family if birthright citizenship is removed? I don't know. See, that's why I don't think they can overturn it. I mean, I just don't think they can overturn birthright citizenship. How far back do you go? How far back? When's the cutoff? How many generations do you they want to say, well, you must have at least one one parent. Okay. But where do you draw the line? And as Oliver's mom asks, is it retroactive and the entire family is no longer citizens? Who knows? It's not well defined in his executive order either. I don't think there's any way that they end up, siding with Donald Trump on this. Now, because it's clear. 14th Amendment is clear. Any person born in the United States. I don't know how else you can interpret that. The only way I could see them weaseling out of this is if it has something to do with, they'd say, well, the group that brought the lawsuit didn't have the standing to bring the lawsuit, so we're going to toss it out, but the executive order gets to stay in place until it gets challenged by a different group. That's the only way I can see them weaseling out of it. Will says, if they overturn the 14th, there will be a civil war. Possibly. That may be one of the things that sparks one hell of an uprising. But how do you overturn an amendment? It's never been done. There's no mechanism in the Constitution for a group that claims to be originalists, specifically the conservative branch of the Supreme Court. They want to look at the document. The document says all persons born in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. Done. The only thing that they're trying to say is, well, and subject to the jurisdiction, well, that only applies to people whose parents are citizens. Well, that means you can't imprison anybody who's not subject to the jurisdiction. You can only deport them. You basically gave everybody who's here illegally diplomatic immunity. Congratulations, you fucked up again. I don't see how they do this. I don't. Oliver's mom says, if that's the case, everyone would need to be deported. Only Native Americans stay. Yeah, but deported to where? How far back do you have to trace your family line before? Where do you stop? None of it makes sense. Coffeeman says they should be having hearings on the clarification of the Second Amendment instead of birthright. Yeah, I mean, that would make more sense. That would make more sense. Actually reading it where it says, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the protection of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The whole idea was for us to be able to get a military if we needed one from the citizenry. It wasn't they didn't want us to have a standing army initially. That was the whole point of the Second Amendment. We won the revolution on a volunteer ragtag army of people coming from their homes, etc., to fight. And a lot of them brought their own weaponry to do so. Will says, Elon Musk said Italians are not Americans. It's getting weird. Yeah, it's getting weird. It's been getting weird since he got involved in politics. Molly said the only way is repealing like prohibition. Exactly. The only way you overturn an amendment is by passing a new amendment. And we've only ever done that once. Will says, I have a podcast with Mike coming out tonight. Oh, cool. Did you record last night then? Because I saw Mike was on here earlier. I thought he might have been doing a live tonight, but I didn't see him go live, so that's when I jumped on. Yeah. Coffee Man says, they hate the Constitution. Trump has previously said the Constitution needs to be revised. Well, this is where Donald Trump is partially correct. It doesn't need to be revised, but it can be revised. And that is the amendment process. Yeah, there it is. There it is, and gone. Yeah, I just blocked good guy. Says politics got weird when George Soros started throwing his money into politics. You already can tell it's a MAGA Trump humper the minute they bring up George Soros. And I block them all. Because all they do is report your live and try to get your videos taken down and go cry to TikTok because their feelings got hurt. For the party of fuck your feelings and facts don't care about your feelings and all that bullshit, they're the first ones to report you. And they can't just scroll on when they see something they don't like. Well, so it's probably a bot. Could be. And we know from that story that broke, a big chunk of those bots that are Republican leaning, they're not even stationed here. They're foreign-based accounts. Yeah, you guys might remember that story where it got broke that Twitter was basically revealing locations of where all these accounts were created, and a bunch of the hardcore MAGA accounts were found out to be nothing more than, foreign accounts, probably bots, or maybe they're real people, but that are just that are fucking around with shit. I got another Trump humper saying, John Jacobs, FIFA World Peace Prize, more winning. Trump, so much winning. It's almost too much winning. Fuck you. That FIFA Peace Prize was just them kissing his ass. It's like South Park said. You show up, you give him a gift and say, "No, Donnie, you don't have a small penis," and he'll do anything and everything you want. That FIFA Peace Prize is bullshit and they know it. It's a consolation prize because you didn't get the Nobel. You don't get the Nobel Peace Prize when you're talking about sending the army on your own people. You don't get the Nobel Peace Prize when you rename your Defense Department the War Department. You don't get a Peace Prize when you're talking about doing land strikes in a foreign country. That Peace Prize from FIFA, I guarantee you, there may only ever be one winner. Donald Trump. Will says there's going to be an incident during the World Cup with ICE. Oh, probably. There already was an incident with ICE, which is why I think there's going to be major investigations into everything that's going on. Apparently, according to at least one article I read, Representative Grijalva was at a restaurant in Arizona. Sitting congresswoman. ICE showed up to do a raid while people were eating. And apparently she got hit with pepper spray by an ICE agent. You have ICE agents attacking sitting members of Congress because they appear to be immigrants. If that story is true, I expect congressional investigations at some point when Democrats are back in power. All of this is going to come to light. And if those agents ever get found out who they are, etc., I expect criminal charges coming. Wouldn't surprise me. Coffeeman says, who cares about FIFA? Not a lot of people in this country. I mean, some do, but by far not nearly as many as everybody else around the world. Will says the FIFA president is so corrupt. I don't know if he's corrupt or if he's just doing what he has to do to get what he wants. They want to be able to have the World Cup here next year, and they want it to go off without a hitch. So they turn around and kiss Donald Trump's ass. Will says World Cup is huge. Oh, I know it's huge. It's just not as huge, I don't think, in the United States as it is compared to the rest of the world. For the rest of the world, the World Cup is way bigger than it is as far as Americans are concerned. Maybe I'm wrong. Deegan says, are these crimes really going to be investigated and prosecuted? Depends. Depends, one, on who do the Dems get as their attorney general. If they get somebody like Merrick Garland who sits on his hands and says, well, it's really a political thing, I'm not getting involved, then no. You get a hard ass who wants to go after it and do it? I think maybe. Oliver's mom says people care about FIFA because of the money it brings if it's out here. Yeah, that's a big thing. The money's going to be huge, and they want it to go off without a hitch, so they're giving Donald Trump a prize. Trying to make sure it happens without a problem. Will says, there will be tribunals separate from the DOJ. Let Jack Smith run them. You know, I would agree with you. Problem is, I don't know if we have the mechanism in place, anything to do that. I just don't know how they would actually do that. We don't have, like, how would they make it happen is my only question. You know, I don't know. Would Congress have to pass a special thing for a special court to handle it, maybe? Coffeeman says maybe the NFL should give a Nobel Peace Award during the Super Bowl halftime show if he's still alive. I wouldn't put it past him, but the NFL doesn't like Donald Trump, specifically the owners. The owners hate Donald Trump. Remember, he tried to buy an NFL franchise in was it the 80s? The 70s? They told him no. They did not want him part of their exclusive club. And I can't imagine that has changed much since then. Well, so South Africa did it. Military tribunals. I understand that other countries have done it. Well, what I'm saying is I don't know that we have a mechanism in place to do it. I don't know how they would actually. Will says they committed war crimes. Will says they committed war crimes, violated the Constitution, military tribunals. That might work, again, that might work for the military. That might work for the military. I don't know how that would fit into our criminal justice system. But I'm not saying that it won't happen. I don't see the how it happens and how where it still works within the way our justice system actually operates and how in the courts, etc. Well, so that's how they did the Nuremberg trials. Yeah. Yeah, and one of the big things that came out of the Nuremberg trials, and it's something that we still believe in to this day, is I'm just following orders is not a good defense. It doesn't work. So all of these people that are down the line saying, well, I just work here, I'm just doing what I'm told, isn't going to work. Will says, we create it. Winners make the rules. Time for justice. Like I said, I just didn't know if Congress would have to pass something to actually make it happen. I mean, they probably could and get the Democratic president to sign off on it. But I just didn't know how that would all work out. Deegan says, how can the FBI director be so bold by using taxpayer money for his private business? Because he believes he's untouchable. He's the head of the FBI. Who's going to investigate him? Pam Bondi's the head of the DOJ. Who's going to prosecute him? He thinks he's untouchable. Will says, executive order, take a page out of the Trump playbook. Yeah, problem is, executive orders don't grant money. So how would it get funded? The money would still have to come from somewhere. Coffeeman says it will be fair game once Democrats take control. They should use the same tactics Trump is. To some degrees, yeah, they should. Will says Kash Patel is brown and he is going down. Yeah, Kash Patel may not be long for head of the FBI. I heard potentially Pandi, Patel, Kristi Noem, and Hegseth are all potentially on the chopping block by this administration. Seems like the only one who's not in trouble right now is RFK Jr. RFK seems to be the one that is fine. Oh, Will says until a new pandemic. Yeah, remember, one of the reasons the pandemic was only as bad as it got, or was as bad as it got, was Donald Trump walked in to the pandemic response team that Obama put in place. They had a pandemic response playbook. Obama created it because they were worried about, what was it, Ebola and something else. And everybody was freaking out. Donald Trump said, "Yeah, we don't pay doctors to sit around." Fired them. Well, yeah, we can find doctors if we need it. Really? Then COVID hits. Couldn't find the infectious disease specialists, and then didn't listen to the ones he had. If there is another pandemic, RFK is going to go. Dr. Oz would probably go. And if Donald Trump goes, if he chokes on a Big Mac, I think within 3 to 6 months of JD Vance taking over, I think everybody in the administration gets replaced. Oliver's mom says Trump basically threw the playbook away. Not basically, did. He said, "Don't need this. I know better." Like he says that about everything. He knows better than the experts. It's one of the reasons why he bankrupted 2 casinos. They told him you can only have a gaming floor in a hotel of a certain size. And if you go anything over this size, you're not going to make any money. He went over that size. Said, "Screw it, I know better. We'll make money." They didn't, and they went bankrupt. Will says, "And now fired the disease specialists at the CDC during the second term." Yeah. What do we need them for? They just tell us things we don't want to hear. Remember what he said during COVID? "Well, I know how to get our case numbers down. We just won't test for it." If there's no testing, you got no cases. Testing, you got no cases. Now, this is going to be the last push for the Republicans. Will says, "Like affordability is a hoax." Yeah, and I got a TikTok that, well, as you hear this, it should already be posted if you're listening to this on the podcast. I don't know if it's up yet, but it should have been released by now. Where Donald Trump went off on some guest on Fox News. He took to Truth Social, I think. Just blasted the guy. "Oh, they should look into whoever books these guys. What a clown," and all sorts of shit. Because the guy said that Donald Trump is the cause of things not being affordable. And of course, he tried to shift the blame back to Biden. It's Biden's fault. We're almost a year into Donald Trump's term. When will Donald Trump accept the fact that he's responsible for some of this? Or is he going to, if he makes it all the way to January 20th, 2029, as he's on his way out the door, and a Democrat's coming into office, because I assume it's going to be a Democrat, is he going to say, "Well, good luck fixing Biden's economy" all the way to then? Oliver's mom says he just lowered fuel mileage standards for new cars. That will take more gas to travel. Yeah, and they did it with the idea that it's going to lower the price for cars. It's not. It's not. But by lowering the standards, they're going to end up making it so they can just put out worse cars. And you're right, it's going to take more gas to go anywhere. Will says, "Watch this Sunday. Every Trump bumper on the news shows will say it's a hoax created by Biden." Probably. Deacon says, "Mike Johnson not going anywhere because nobody wants his job." Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, I think he may be going somewhere, though. He may end up going away, and that's only because if more Republicans end up dropping out and Democrats flip a few seats, their margin is so thin. If Democrats pick up a few seats, he can be done as speaker before the midterms. But I think after, I definitely think after the midterms, you are staring at a Democratic Speaker of the House. Now, will it be Hakeem Jeffries? Or will it be somebody else? I have no idea. Coffeeman says Trump never lacked for anything. He's never punched a clock, went shopping, or driven a car. Pretty much. Just like when he told ranchers that he knew more about farming and ranching than they did. When he said your plan to bring in Venezuelan beef is going to cause our price, you're going to hurt us. Oh, I know more than you do. You don't know what you're talking about. Oliver's mom says worse cars means more service and repairs needed, costing more over time. Yeah, it's all about making money off of people. That's all they want to do. And they use somebody as dumb as Donald Trump to make it happen. Will says possibly 258 seats for Democrats in Congress. Yeah, I've been saying I think they could take the House by 40 to 50 seats. The big one is, can they get the Senate by one seat? I think there's potentially 4 or 5, maybe even 6 seats in the Senate up for grabs. And if the Democrats take the Senate, that is going to be huge. Will says technology and vehicles will not go backwards. Too expensive. Yeah, that's half of it. Now that they're putting in the technology, a lot of it's cheaper to use than it is to go backward. Coffeeman said he also never sat in a college class or take it in an exam. Well, I don't know about the exams because we heard he paid other people to take those for him. But we know he did at least attend the Wharton School of Business. Now, we don't know what his grades were because he's never released those transcripts. And he threatened to sue anybody who would release them. But apparently he did go. Deegan said, how really is Trump's health? Many had predicted he would have long gone or resigned. Well, I don't expect him to resign. Not with his health. The only way he may resign is if somebody gets to him and says, look, you gotta resign, and J.D. Vance will float you a pardon. That way you're not facing any criminal problems after you're out. Maybe. But even that's a stretch because you got to make sure he's in the right frame of mind to do that. I don't think he'd ever voluntarily leave. As far as his health, not great. Just look at him. He doesn't look good. He's falling asleep in public. He's sundowning. Look at how he falls asleep in cabinet meetings. He falls asleep, multiple times. The one day they were doing an event in the Oval Office, and he stopped and he turned to, I think it was RFK. Well, we stood a lot yesterday. Is it okay if I sit down? Like, in the middle of the event. Like, stopped talking about whatever they were talking about and was complaining about having stood for too long for 2 days in a row and said he needed to sit down. And now you're, he had to sit down, and now you'll only see him sitting behind the Resolute desk or sitting somewhere. He's not in good shape. And then you see there's a video of him dragging his foot, which is a potential sign of having had a stroke. It's not looking good for Donald. Sue says, except JD can't pardon him on the New York charges. Isn't that state, not federal? Yes. But technically, Donald Trump has already been sentenced on those charges. They didn't defer sentencing. and I forget the legal term for it, but they effectively gave him a non-sentence and said, "Well, we understand your thing, so we're sentencing you, but no time served and no punishment, no probation, no nothing because of you becoming president. But there, you're sentenced. You're guilty." It was a joke. Will says, "If Trump attended Wharton, I'm Chris Hemsworth." Yeah, supposedly he did. Oliver's mom says he fell asleep in the Oval Office in a meeting with foreign dignitaries. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that he's falling. It's a sign of age. It's a sign of dementia. And what we really need to be watching for, since we're watching him decline in real time, he's not golfing nearly as much and things like that. Watch for the rally. If he starts having a rally, and I'm not talking about a political rally. Will says 2 MRIs in 6 months. That's not good. Yeah, and then he doesn't even know what he had the scans done of. But if he suddenly gets a couple good days where he's very clear, very alert, and hyperactive, that could be a sign that he is on the way out, that the time is here. Coffeeman says he's receiving best medical care to keep him viable, but the mind can't be fixed by medication. Exactly. Deegan says, are the Venezuelans going to sue the U.S. government for murdering their citizens? I don't know. They could try. All right. Well, thank you for that gift. Oliver's mom says, days of clarity usually come before passing with mental decline. That's what I'm talking about. Will says, NBC reported that they have proof Hegseth ordered hits on boats. Yeah, I think Hegseth is going to take the fall for this. Whether or not it ends up being through an impeachment, or if Donald Trump ends up asking for his resignation or something, I think Hegseth takes the fall, and then Donald Trump tries to sweep it under the rug. Will says Trump's mind has never been clear. Oh, probably not. Not at least not for decades at this point. With all of the substance abuse and things like that he has done over the years, it hasn't been clear for a long time. All right. Well, I've been doing this a little over an hour, about an hour 15. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this live. I want to thank you all for joining me. And I want to remind everybody that all of my TikTok lives will end up over on YouTube, and for the video, the audio over on Spotify. This is probably going to end up being the Analytical Iowan podcast for tomorrow. So I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you have a great day, and I'll be back tomorrow because there's always shit to talk about when it comes to news and politics. Again, you can catch the video version over on YouTube at Analytical Iowan, audio on Spotify at Analytical Iowan. And I want to thank you for joining me. Have a great night.
That was Eric. That does it for our analysis today. If you appreciated us cutting through the noise to get to the critical context, please make sure you're subscribed to the Analytical Iowan podcast on Spotify and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.